After I left this world, I thought my family would grieve together, but they didn't. They fought over money, over possessions, over things that suddenly mattered more than the person who'd left them behind. I watched from somewhere between heaven and earth, suspended in that strange twilight where the dead linger before moving on. The hospital room faded, the pain faded. My body, the shell I'd inhabited for 63 years, faded into nothing. But I didn't fade, not yet. I remained, tethered to the world by invisible threads I couldn't see but could feel pulling at me, keeping me here, keeping me watching, and what I saw broke whatever remained of my heart. The reading of my will happened 3 days after my funeral. 3 days. They couldn't even wait a week. My attorney, Richard, sat behind his mahogany desk in his downtown office, surrounded by my children, all four of them. Daniel, my eldest at 41, Sarah, 38, Michael, 35, and Rebecca, my baby at 32. I'd loved them all equally, completely, with every fiber of my being. I'd given them everything I had, every dollar I earned, every ounce of energy I possessed, every moment of my time. I'd raised them alone after their father died when Rebecca was only 2. Worked 2 jobs to keep them fed and clothed and in decent schools. Sacrificed vacations, new clothes, simple pleasures so they could have music lessons and sports equipment and college educations. I'd poured myself into them like water into cups, believing that if I gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, they would grow into kind, compassionate, grateful adults. And they had. Or so I thought. But now, sitting in that lawyer's office, I saw something else. Something I'd been blind to while I was alive. Richard cleared his throat and opened the manila folder containing my last will and testament. "Thank you all for coming," he said. His voice was formal, professional, the voice of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "I know this is a difficult time, but we need to address your mother's estate." Estate. Such a cold word for everything I'd built, everything I'd saved, everything I'd worked for. "Your mother left very specific instructions," Richard continued. "She wanted to make sure everything was handled fairly and according to her wishes." He began to read. "The house, the small 3-bedroom ranch I'd finally paid off 5 years before I died, would be sold. The proceeds split 4 ways. My retirement account, modest but enough to leave them each something, divided equally. My few pieces of jewelry, my mother's engagement ring, my grandmother's pearls, the gold bracelet my husband gave me before he died, distributed according to the list I'd carefully written. My car, my furniture, my books, my dishes, my everything, all of it itemized, all of it assigned, all of it meant to prevent exactly what happened next." Daniel spoke first. "Wait," he said, leaning forward. "The house is worth at least 400,000. That means we each get 100,000?" Richard nodded. "Approximately, yes, after closing costs and any outstanding debts." "And the retirement account?" 240,000, 60,000 each." I watched Daniel's face, watched him calculate, watched the numbers shift behind his eyes. "What about the life insurance?" he asked. "There is no life insurance," Richard said gently. "Your mother let that policy lapse when she retired. The premiums were too expensive." Daniel's face hardened. "So that's it? 160,000 each? That's what 30 years of her working herself to death amounts to?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Worked herself to death. Is that what he thought? That I died for money? That my worth could be measured in the assets I left behind? Sarah spoke next. "What about her jewelry? The will says I get the engagement ring, but that ring is worth at least $10,000. Maybe more. That's not fair to everyone else." "Your mother specified that you would receive the ring," Richard said carefully. "She felt you would appreciate its sentimental value." "Sentimental value doesn't pay bills," Sarah shot back. I stared at her. My Sarah. My daughter who used to climb into my lap and tell me she loved me more than the whole wide world. Who used to make me Mother's Day cards with crayon drawings of the 2 of us holding hands. When had she changed? Or had she always been this way and I'd just been too blind to see it? Michael shifted in his seat. "I don't care about the jewelry, but I do care about the house. I think we should keep it, rent it out, use it as an investment property. Splitting the proceeds 4 ways doesn't make sense when we could all be earning passive income. Rebecca nodded. I agree. Selling it feels wrong, like we're just throwing away everything Mom built. We're not throwing anything away, Daniel said sharply. We're being practical. None of us live in this city anymore. None of us need the house. Selling it makes the most sense. For you, Michael countered, you just want the cash. Don't act like you don't. I'm thinking long term. You're thinking about control. You've always needed to control everything. Richard held up his hand. Gentlemen, please, this isn't productive. But it was too late. The accusations flew. Old wounds opened. Resentments I didn't know existed spilled out like poison. Daniel had always been jealous of Michael. Michael had always felt overshadowed by Daniel. Sarah resented Rebecca for being the baby. Rebecca resented Sarah for being Mom's favorite. Favorite? I'd never had a favorite. I'd loved them all equally, desperately. Imperfectly, perhaps, but with everything I had. But they didn't see it that way. They saw inequality, unfairness, slights and wounds I'd never intended. And now, with me gone, those wounds festered. The meeting ended with nothing resolved. They left Richard's office, barely speaking to each other. 4 people who'd grown up in the same house, shared the same meals, been raised by the same mother, now divided by money and possessions, and the belief that somehow in death I'd failed them. I followed them. I didn't know how. I just thought about where they were going. And suddenly I was there. Daniel went home to his wife, Jennifer, and their 2 teenage sons. His house was beautiful, big, expensive. The kind of home I dreamed of giving my children but never could afford. Jennifer met him at the door. How did it go? Daniel threw his keys on the counter. About what I expected. She left everything split 4 ways, no surprises, no acknowledgement of who actually helped her, who actually visited, who actually gave a damn. Jennifer frowned. Daniel, that's not fair. You know she loved all of you. Did she? Because funny, I'm the one who drove her to every doctor's appointment for the last 5 years. I'm the one who made sure her medications were filled. I'm the one who spent every Sunday with her while the others couldn't be bothered. They have their own lives. So do I. Daniel's voice cracked. So do I, and I put it on hold for her. And for what? To split everything equally with people who barely showed up? He sank into a chair, suddenly deflated. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know I sound awful. I know I shouldn't be thinking about the money, but I'm tired, Jen. I'm so tired, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd recognize what I did for her. Acknowledge it in some way. Jennifer put her hand on his shoulder. She knew. I'm sure she knew. But Daniel shook his head. If she knew, she would have said something. She would have done something. I wanted to scream. I had known. Of course I'd known. I'd seen Daniel's sacrifice, his time, his energy, his willingness to show up when the others couldn't or wouldn't. But I'd also known that love isn't transactional, that being a caretaker doesn't earn you a bigger inheritance. That fairness sometimes means treating people equally even when their contributions aren't equal. I divided my estate 4 ways because I loved them all, but Daniel heard that as, your sacrifice didn't matter, and that broke my heart. Sarah went home to her apartment, small, cluttered, the kind of place that screams struggling single mother trying to make ends meet. Her daughter, Emma, was 7, beautiful, smart, full of the same fire Sarah had at that age. Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and collapsed on the couch. Emma climbed up next to her. Did you see Grandma today? Sarah's face softened. No, baby. Grandma's gone, remember? We went to her funeral. I know, but did you see her in heaven? Sarah pulled Emma close. I don't think it works that way. I miss her. Me too. Emma was quiet for a moment, then, is Grandma rich now? Sarah's face tightened. What? No. Why? Would you ask that? Janie at school said when people die, they leave money. And her grandpa left them a lot of money, and now they have a pool. Sarah took a long drink of wine. Grandma left us some money, yes, but not pool money. How much? Enough to help us, enough to make things a little easier. She didn't tell Emma the amount. Didn't explain that the $160,000 she'd inherit would mean Emma could go to a better school, could have new clothes that fit, could have birthday parties and summer camps and all the things Sarah had always wanted to give her but couldn't afford. She didn't tell Emma that she'd spent the entire lawyer meeting calculating how far the money would stretch, or that she'd felt a flash of resentment when Rebecca, who didn't have kids, who didn't struggle, who didn't need it the way Sarah did, received the exact same amount. Sarah loved her siblings, but she also resented them for having easier lives, for not understanding what it meant to raise a child alone, for not needing the money the way she did. And she resented me too for being fair when what she needed was for me to see her struggle and help more, for dividing everything equally when equality wasn't the same as justice. Michael went to his office. Even though it was evening, even though his wife was home with their baby daughter, even though he'd promised to be home for dinner, he sat at his desk and stared at spreadsheets that meant nothing. His phone buzzed, a text from his wife, Alicia. "Where are you?" He typed back. "Office, sorry, lost track of time." "You promised you'd be home." "I know, I'm sorry, soon." But he didn't leave. He sat there, staring at the numbers, thinking about the $160,000 that would be his. It wasn't enough. Not for what he needed, not for the business venture he'd been planning, not for the life he wanted to build. His younger brother's voice echoed in his head. "You've always needed to control everything." Michael had almost laughed. Control? He didn't want control. He wanted security, stability, a future that didn't feel so precarious. He wanted to not wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about money, about whether his startup would succeed or fail, about whether he'd made the right choice leaving his stable corporate job to chase this dream. The inheritance would help, but it wouldn't be enough. And now, because of the way the will was structured, he was stuck. He couldn't buy out his siblings' shares of the house, couldn't turn it into the investment property he knew it could be, couldn't do anything except take his portion and watch the opportunity slip away. He texted Alicia again. "I'm thinking about Mom." A lie, but easier than the truth. She responded with a heart emoji, and Michael felt like the worst person in the world. Because the truth was, he wasn't thinking about me. He was thinking about money, about lost opportunities, about how even in death, I'd managed to limit him, control him, keep him from reaching his full potential. He didn't mean to think these things, but he couldn't stop. Rebecca went for a drive. She didn't go home, didn't call her boyfriend, just drove aimlessly through the city. Windows down, music loud enough to drown out her thoughts. But they wouldn't be drowned. The meeting had been horrible. Worse than she'd expected. She'd known her siblings could be difficult. They'd always fought, always competed. But she'd thought, hoped, that my death would unite them, would remind them what mattered. Instead, it had exposed every crack in their foundation. Daniel, with his barely concealed anger. Sarah, with her calculating eyes. Michael, with his spreadsheets and investment talk. None of them had cried. None of them had talked about me as a person, as a mother, as someone they'd loved. They'd talked about assets, distributions, fair market value, as if I could be reduced to numbers on a page. Rebecca pulled over at a park and got out of her car. She walked to a bench overlooking a pond where I used to bring her when she was little. We'd feed the ducks, count the turtles, talk about everything and nothing. She sat down and finally let herself cry. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. I'm so sorry." Because Rebecca knew something the others didn't. She knew I'd been disappointed, not in them, but in the way they drifted apart over the years. The way holidays had become obligatory rather than joyful. The way they'd stopped calling each other, except when they needed something. I'd tried to keep them close, organized family dinners, sent group texts, reminded them that they were siblings, they were family, they had each other. But they'd been too busy, too focused on their own lives, too convinced that blood didn't require maintenance, and now I was gone. And they were fighting over my leftovers. Rebecca pulled out her phone and opened the family group chat, the one I'd started years ago that had been silent for months. She typed, "Can we please just stop? Can we please remember that Mom just died? That this isn't about money?" She hit send and waited and waited. No one responded. The next day, Daniel hired his own lawyer. He wanted to contest the will, argued that as the primary caretaker, he deserved a larger share, that his contributions warranted recognition. His lawyer was skeptical. Your mother's will is very clear, and she was of sound mind when she wrote it. Contesting it will be expensive and likely unsuccessful. I don't care, Daniel said. It's not right. It's not fair. Fair is subjective. She should have acknowledged what I did for her. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. Let me ask you something. Why did you take care of your mother? Was it because you expected compensation or because you loved her? Daniel's face flushed. Of course I loved her. Then why does the money matter? The question hung in the air. Daniel didn't have an answer, or rather, he had one, but he didn't want to say it out loud. Because the truth was complicated. Yes, he'd loved me, but he'd also resented me for needing care, for taking up his time, for making him the responsible one while his siblings lived their carefree lives. And now, seeing them get the same reward for doing nothing, it felt like a slap in the face, like I was saying their absence was equal to his presence. That love could be measured in dollars and divided evenly regardless of effort. Sarah called Michael. Did you hear? Daniel's trying to contest the will. Michael was silent for a moment. Are you serious? Dead serious. His lawyer called Richard this morning. That's insane. Is it though? Sarah's voice was careful. I mean, he did do more than the rest of us. Maybe he has a point. So you're on his side now. I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just saying I understand where he's coming from. You understand because you also think you deserve more, Michael said sharply. What's that supposed to mean? You've been calculating from day one. I saw your face at the reading. You were adding everything up, figuring out how much you'd get, deciding whether it was enough. I have a daughter to raise alone, Michael. Forgive me for thinking about our financial future. And I have a business to run, and Daniel has college tuition coming up. We all have reasons to care about the money, but at least I'm not pretending it's about fairness or principle. At least I'm honest about it. Sarah's voice went cold. You know what? Forget it. Forget I called. She hung up, and Michael sat there, phone in hand, wondering when his family had become strangers. Rebecca tried to organize a family meeting. She sent individual texts to each sibling, suggested they all sit down together, talk things through without lawyers or anger or accusations. Daniel responded, there's nothing to talk about until the legal issues are resolved. Sarah responded, I don't think that's a good idea right now. Michael didn't respond at all. Rebecca threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, and she didn't care. Because what was the point of having a phone if no one wanted to talk to her anyway? She thought about me, about how I'd held this family together through sheer force of will, how I'd been the glue that kept them connected even when they had nothing else in common. And now that I was gone, they were falling apart. She wanted to call me, to ask for advice, to hear me say it would be okay. But I was dead, and nothing was okay. I watched all of this from my place between worlds, watched my children, my babies, tear each other apart over money I'd spent decades accumulating, over possessions I'd carefully divided, over an estate that represented my entire life's work. And I felt something I'd never felt while alive. Anger, not at them, or not just at them, at myself, for thinking I could control this, for believing that a carefully written will would prevent conflict, for assuming that money could be distributed without causing pain. I'd been naive. I'd thought I could orchestrate harmony from beyond the grave, but I couldn't, because money does something to people. It reveals who they really are, what they really value, what they're willing to fight for, and what they're willing to sacrifice. And my children, good people, loving people, had shown sides of themselves I'd never seen, sides they probably didn't know existed. The case went to mediation. Richard suggested it, said it would be cheaper and faster than court, give everyone a chance to be heard, maybe find common ground. They all agreed, reluctantly. The mediator was a woman in her 50s, calm, professional, the kind of person who'd seen 1,000 family fights and knew exactly how they'd end. She started by asking each of them to share their perspective. Daniel went first. I spent 5 years taking care of my mother. 5 years of Sunday visits, doctor appointments, medication management, emergency room trips at 2 in the morning. I rearranged my entire life around her needs. He paused. I didn't do it for money. I did it because I loved her, because she needed me, because I thought it was the right thing to do. His voice cracked. But now, watching my siblings get the exact same amount as me, people who barely visited, who barely called, who couldn't be bothered. It feels like she's saying my sacrifice didn't matter, that it didn't mean anything. Sarah spoke next. I'm a single mother. I work 2 jobs. I struggle every single day to give my daughter a good life. And yes, I didn't visit mom as much as Daniel. Because I couldn't. Because I was drowning. Because I could barely keep my head above water. She wiped her eyes. I loved mom. But I also needed her help. And she couldn't give it. Or wouldn't. I don't know which. All I know is that now she's gone. And I'm still drowning. And the money she left isn't enough to save me. Michael went third. I'm trying to build something, a business, a legacy, something I can pass on to my daughter. And I needed mom's support, not just emotional support, financial support, mentorship, guidance. He looked down at his hands. She gave me none of those things. She told me to play it safe. Take the stable job, don't take risks. And when I did anyway, she acted like I disappointed her. He took a breath. Now she's left me money, but not enough. Not enough to make the business work. Not enough to matter. Just enough to remind me that even in death, she didn't believe in me. Rebecca spoke last. I just want my family back, she said simply. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house. I don't care who gets what. She looked at each of her siblings. I care that we're falling apart, that we're fighting over things that don't matter, that we're forgetting the person we lost. Her voice broke. Mom held us together, and now she's gone, and we're just breaking, and I don't know how to fix it. The room was silent. The mediator let the silence sit for a long moment. Then she spoke. Here's what I'm hearing. Daniel feels unseen. Sarah feels unsupported. Michael feels doubted. And Rebecca feels like she's losing her family. She looked at each of them. And you're all probably right. Your mother, like all of us, was imperfect. She loved you, but she couldn't give each of you exactly what you needed. No parent can. She paused. The question is, are you going to let that imperfection destroy you? Are you going to let money, which none of you actually need to survive, become more important than the relationships you still have? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. It's not about the money. Isn't it? The mediator asked gently. He didn't answer. They broke for lunch. Daniel sat in his car and called Jennifer. How's it going? She asked. Horrible. They're all playing the victim, acting like mom wronged them somehow. And you're not? Daniel froze. What? You're doing the same thing, Daniel. You're hurt because you feel overlooked. That's valid, but so are their feelings. They didn't do anything. They lived their lives, just like you lived yours. They made choices, just like you made choices. And now you're all trying to figure out what those choices were worth. She sighed. But they're not worth your family. They're not worth turning your siblings into enemies. They're just not. Daniel closed his eyes. I know. Then act like it. He hung up and sat there, engine off, windows down, letting the spring air wash over him. And slowly, so slowly, he began to understand something. I hadn't divided my estate equally to diminish his sacrifice. I'd done it because I loved them all. Because to me, they were all equally valuable, equally important, equally mine. The money wasn't a commentary on their worth. It was just money. Sarah sat in a park near the mediator's office and called Emma's father. They'd been divorced for 6 years. It hadn't been amicable, but he answered on the second ring. Sarah, hey, I need to talk to someone, and you're the only person I know who understands how hard this is. She told him about the will, the fighting, the realization that she'd been measuring my love in dollars. Here's what I think, he said when she finished. I think your mom did the best she could with what she had. And I think you're scared. Scared about money, about the future, about whether you can do this alone. I am, she admitted. But you've been doing it alone for years. And you're killing it, Sarah. Emma's thriving. You're thriving. This money will help. But it's not what's keeping you afloat. His voice softened. Your mom knew that. She trusted you to figure it out. Maybe that's why she didn't give you more. Not because you didn't deserve it, but because she believed you didn't need it. Sarah hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe I hadn't seen her struggle as failure. Maybe I'd seen it as strength. Michael went back to his office. sat at his desk, pulled up the business plan he'd been working on, and really looked at it. For the first time in months, he looked at it objectively, not as something he needed to make work at all costs, but as something that might not work, that might fail. And he realized something. He'd been blaming me for not supporting his dream. But the truth was, I had supported him, just not financially. I'd told him to be smart, to have a backup plan, to protect his family, not because I didn't believe in him, but because I'd watched people lose everything chasing dreams that didn't pan out. I'd wanted him to succeed, but I'd also wanted him to survive if he didn't. And maybe, just maybe, that was its own kind of love. Rebecca went to my grave. She brought flowers, sat on the grass, talked to me like I could hear her. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom," she said. "They're so angry and hurt, and I don't think they even know it's not really about the money." She pulled at the grass. "Daniel wants recognition. Sarah wants security. Michael wants validation. And I just want my family to love each other the way you loved us." She looked at my headstone. "But maybe that's the problem. Maybe we don't know how to love each other without you in the middle. Maybe you were the translator, the bridge, the thing that made us make sense." She wiped her eyes. "I don't know how to be that. I don't know how to hold them together, but I'm going to try, because that's what you would want." She kissed her fingers and pressed them to my name carved in stone. "I love you, Mom. I hope wherever you are, you know that." I did know. I'd always known. The mediation resumed after lunch. The mediator asked a simple question. "What would your mother want?" Daniel spoke first. "She'd want us to stop fighting." Sarah nodded. "She'd want us to be family." Michael added, "She'd want us to take care of each other." Rebecca smiled through tears. "She'd want us to remember that we're more than this, more than money and houses and who got what." The mediator leaned forward. "So what if we reframe this? What if instead of dividing assets, we think about what your mother was really trying to give you?" They all looked at her, confused. "She wasn't giving you money," the mediator said. "She was giving you security, freedom, the ability to make choices, to take chances, to live lives you couldn't otherwise afford." She paused. "So instead of fighting over amounts, what if you each decided what that security looks like for you, and then work together to make sure everyone gets it?" Daniel spoke slowly. "I don't need a bigger share. I just needed someone to acknowledge what I did." He looked at his siblings. "I needed you to see me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I see you. I'm sorry I didn't say it before, but I see you and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful you were there for her when I couldn't be." Michael nodded. "Me too. I know I was distant. I know I wasn't there. But that doesn't mean I didn't care. It just means I was drowning in my own stuff." Rebecca reached across the table and took Daniel's hand. "You were amazing, Daniel. Mom knew it. We all know it. The money doesn't reflect that, but our gratitude does." Daniel's face crumpled, and for the first time since I died, he let himself really cry. Not angry tears, not bitter tears, just grief, pure and simple and clean. They didn't solve everything that day. They still had logistics to work out, decisions to make, papers to sign. But something shifted. They started talking, really talking. Not about money, about me, about memories, about the ways I'd shaped them, about the lessons I'd taught them, intentionally and unintentionally, about how I'd shown them that love isn't perfect, but it's persistent, that family isn't about blood, it's about showing up, that things don't matter, but people do. They talked about keeping the house, not as an investment property, but as a place they could all go, a neutral ground, a reminder of where they came from. They talked about creating a college fund for Emma from part of the proceeds. They talked about Michael's business and how they could each contribute a small amount to help him launch it. They talked about taking turns, visiting my grave together. They talked about having family dinners once a month. No matter what, no excuses. They talked about being the family I'd always wanted them to be. Not because I demanded it, but because they wanted it. And slowly, so slowly, I felt the threads holding me here begin to loosen. 3 months after my death, they gathered at the house one last time before it sold. They decided together to let it go, use the money to secure each other's futures rather than holding onto a building that was just a building, But first, they walked through it together. Remembered. Daniel stood in the kitchen. "This is where Mom taught me to make scrambled eggs." Sarah laughed. "She taught all of us to make scrambled eggs. It was like her signature life skill." Michael ran his hand along the counter. "Remember when she burned the Thanksgiving turkey so badly the fire alarm went off?" Rebecca grinned. "And we ordered pizza instead, and she said it was the best Thanksgiving ever because we were all together." They drifted into the living room, sat on the old couch I'd refused to replace even though it was threadbare and sagging. "I'm sorry," Daniel said suddenly, "for being such a jerk, for making this about me when it was about all of us." Sarah shook her head. "We all were. We all forgot what mattered." "Mom would have knocked our heads together," Michael said. "She would have," Rebecca agreed. "And then she would have made us apologize and hug it out." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Daniel spoke. "I've been thinking about something, about why the will bothered me so much." They waited. "I think I was afraid that if Mom didn't acknowledge what I did, then it didn't count, like my sacrifice was meaningless, like I was just doing what was expected and nothing special." He looked at his siblings. "But that's not how love works, is it? Love doesn't count. It doesn't measure. It doesn't keep score. It just is." Sarah wiped her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "Therapy," Daniel said with a small smile. "Lots of therapy." They laughed, and it felt good. Normal, like we used to be. Rebecca stood. "I have something for each of you." She pulled out 4 envelopes from her bag. "I found these in Mom's desk. She wrote them a few months before she died. I think she knew her time was running out." She handed them out, one to each sibling. "Don't read them now," she said. "Read them later, when you're alone, when you can really hear her." They all nodded, clutching the envelopes like lifelines, and I watched, knowing what was in those letters, knowing what I'd tried to tell them. That night, Daniel opened his letter. "My dearest Daniel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I imagine you're angry with me. You've probably been angry with me for a while now, even though you'd never say it. You think I didn't notice how much you gave up for me. But I did. I noticed every Sunday visit, every rushed phone call from the doctor's office, every time you rearranged your life to accommodate mine. And I'm grateful, more grateful than I could ever say. But Danielle, I never wanted you to sacrifice yourself for me. I never wanted you to put your life on hold. I wanted you to live fully, joyfully, without the weight of obligation crushing you. If I'd left you more in the will, you would have seen it as payment for services rendered. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't reduce your love to a transaction. You cared for me because you love me, not because I could pay you back. And that love, that's worth more than any amount of money I could leave you. Don't measure your worth by what you receive. Measure it by what you give freely. I love you, I'm proud of you, and I hope you can forgive me for not being the mother you needed me to be. All my love." Mom Daniel read it 3 times. Then he called Jennifer and read it to her, and he cried. Not bitter tears this time, healing tears. Sarah opened hers the next morning. "My sweet Sarah, you've always been so strong, so independent, so determined to do everything on your own, and I'm proud of that. But I also worried about you. I worried that you thought asking for help was weakness, that you thought struggling meant failing. It doesn't. I didn't give you more money because I didn't think you could make it work. I gave you the same as everyone else because I believed you could do anything with whatever you had. You're resourceful, creative, resilient in ways I never was. And Emma, she's going to grow up watching her mother be a warrior. That's worth more than any financial security I could provide. I wish I'd told you more often how proud I was of you, how much I admired your strength, how much I believed in you. Don't let money define your worth. You're already wealthy in all the ways that matter. I love you so much." Mom Sarah read it on her lunch break at work. And when Emma came home from school that day, Sarah hugged her extra tight and whispered, "Okay, Sarah, we're going to be okay." Michael opened his on Sunday morning. "Dear Michael, I know you thought I didn't believe in you, that I didn't support your dreams, but that's not true. I believed in you so much it scared me. Because belief isn't the same as certainty. And I couldn't be certain your business would work. I couldn't promise you success. What I could do was make sure you had a safety net, a cushion, something to fall back on if things didn't go the way you hoped. I didn't want to limit you. I wanted to protect you. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe you needed me to be reckless with you, to bet everything on your vision, but I couldn't do it because I love you too much to watch you lose everything. So I gave you enough to help, but not enough to depend on because I wanted you to succeed on your own terms. To know that whatever you build, you built it, not me, you. I'm so proud of you, Michael, of your courage, your vision, your willingness to take risks I never could. Don't let my caution dim your light. All my love. Mom Michael read it twice. Then he called Alicia and said, I think I need to rework the business plan. Make it more sustainable, more realistic. Because of the money? She asked. No, Michael said. Because Mom was right. I need to build something that can survive even if everything goes wrong. Rebecca read hers that night at my grave. My baby Rebecca, you've always been the heart of this family, the one who sees the good in everyone, who tries to hold us all together. But sweetie, that's not your job. I was the bridge because I chose to be, not because I had to be, not because it was my duty. And now that I'm gone, you don't have to replace me. Let your siblings figure out how to love each other. Let them stumble and fight and eventually find their way. You can't force connection. You can only model it. So be yourself, be loving, be open, but don't sacrifice your peace trying to fix everyone else. They'll find their way, and when they do, you'll all be stronger for it. I left you the same amount as everyone else because you're not less important. You're equally valuable, equally loved. And I hope you'll use your share to do something just for you, something that makes you happy, something that reminds you that you matter too. I love you more than words can say. Thank you for being my light. Mom Rebecca folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her chest. I'll try, Mom, she whispered. I'll try. 6 months after my death, they had their first family dinner. Daniel hosted, Jennifer made lasagna. The kids ran around the backyard while the adults sat on the porch with wine and lemonade. They talked about work, about life, about normal things. And then Sarah asked, what should we talk about, Mom? They all got quiet. I think about her every day, Michael said, about what she'd say about the business, about whether she'd be proud. She would be, Rebecca said firmly. She is. Daniel nodded. I'm starting to understand what she was trying to teach us. About love not being transactional. About family not being about keeping score. It's hard, though, Sarah admitted, to not feel like someone's giving more or less, to not measure. It is, Daniel agreed. But I think that's the point. Real love doesn't measure, it just gives. They sat with that for a moment, then Rebecca raised her glass. To Mom, for teaching us what mattered, even when we didn't want to learn. They all raised their glasses. To Mom. And I felt it, the final thread releasing. I'd stayed because I was worried. Because I needed to see them okay. Needed to know they'd survive my absence. But they would. They were. They'd fought. They'd struggled. They'd said terrible things and felt terrible things, but they'd also found their way back to each other. Not because of money, but in spite of it. And that's when I understood what I'd been too alive to see. Love isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what you build while you're here. The possessions don't matter. The money doesn't matter. The things you spend your life accumulating don't matter. What matters is the people, the relationships, the memories, the ways you shape each other and hold each other and help each other become who you're meant to be. I divided my estate equally because I loved them equally. But the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson they had to learn without me. That family is worth fighting for, that love is worth protecting, that things can be replaced, but people can't. And that sometimes the most valuable thing you can leave your children is the space to figure it out themselves. The light came then, warm and bright and welcoming. It wrapped around me like an embrace, and I stepped into it without fear. Because I knew my children would be okay. They would love each other imperfectly. They would fight and reconcile and fight again. But they would do it together. And that was enough. If you're listening to this story, I want you to know something. The things you're fighting about right now, they probably don't matter as much as you think. The money, the possessions, the who got what and who deserves more. They're distractions. What matters is the people sitting across from you. The family you have right now in this moment. Well, Everyone is still breathing. Don't wait until someone dies to realize what you had. Don't wait until you're standing at a grave to say the things that need to be said. Don't let money or pride or old wounds keep you from loving the people who matter. Because here's the truth: you can't take any of it with you. Not the money, not the house, not the possessions. All you take is love, and all you leave behind is love. So make sure it's enough. Make sure it's real. Make sure the people you care about know it while they can still hear you, while it still matters, while you still have time. After I left this world, I saw my family fighting over my will. But what I really saw was fear. Fear that they weren't enough. Fear that they hadn't done enough. Fear that I hadn't loved them enough. And it broke my heart because I did love them. More than anything, more than the money I saved and the house I built and the possessions I accumulated, I loved them. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. If this story touched you, share it with the people you love. Subscribe to Being Higher for more stories that remind us what it means to rise above the things that divide us and remember the love that connects us. Because we're all on this journey together, learning what truly matters before it's too late. I'll meet you in the next story. Until then, tell the people you love that you love them. Don't wait. Don't let pride or fear or money get in the way. Choose love, choose family, choose to be higher.